Welcome to the Rooted Healing podcast, where we seek to deepen our kinship with the living landscapes around us and within us. This is a space where stories heal with words that weave us closer to our wild and interrelational nature, where we explore ways to root down and re-indigenize ourselves to the land, ecosystems, communities, and practices that help us heal, reimagine, and co-create the world we love to be alive in.
I wasn't sure where I wanted to live in the world, but I had this intense, clear vision of me as a grandmother in some woodland, and that woodland was in England, and I had all my grandchildren playing around me. And it was so beautiful to get such a clear message of where I belonged.
This is a different kind of episode introducing you to Aisha von Nahmmacher, who works with me on Rooted Healing, and we last minute as ever decided to record a bonus episode of sorts in honour of the solstice and to mark our full cycle of work together. Aisha is a documentary producer currently delving into hidden ancestral practices in Britain and Ireland. She's also a yoga teacher who fuses the mycelial realm regularly into her work, and she was the curator of our gatherings, Forestlings, which was a joyous, playful exploration of autumn's delightful wisdom. So it goes without saying that Aisha is an avid plant and fungi medicine advocate who is also burrowing away to try to help Rooted Healing grow more roots. I'm really grateful for her work and her support, and just it's incredible having her by my side doing this. You may be hearing more from her as this new cycle of the podcast unfurls. We went on a meandering escapade through the landscapes of solstices, ancestral stones, ceremony, and psilocybin. We spoke of going into the darkness at this potent time, and so at the end of this episode we've woven in a beautiful song called Let the Light In by Bonnie Medicine from her new album Wide Open, to also remember why we celebrate the solstice sun, embracing midwinter as the beginning of our returning emergent light for our elongating days. Tending to the hearth and the inner light together to get through these winter months. And as the wind is howling outside right now, I really feel the beauty of this song. If you are not in the Northern Hemisphere, sorry, but we also talked a lot about summer solstice. So hopefully you'll still feel comforted and inspired by this conversation. Head to rootedhealing.org to explore our gatherings for next year and our upcoming online course, Deepen Your Roots, now with our full lineup of special guests and some surprise bonus sessions still brewing. The course begins on Imbolc, so it could be a potent time to enroll now amidst the solstice, planting those intentions. I won't give more details, but head to rootedhealing.org/deepen to learn more.
My name is Aisha, and the aspect of the land I'd like to call upon in this conversation would be the forest, most notably Epping Forest, just on the outskirts of London. These are really important to me as a child. My dad used to take me on the Central Line, on the London Tube, and we'd go off at the last stop. And I'd just be in awe of the fact that we're in this ancient woodland. And the animal I'd like to bring into the conversation is the fox. Coming from inner city London, the fox was one of the only sort of wild animals that we'd really encounter on a day-to-day basis. And I just love their sort of mischievous, playful nature and the way that they'd pretty much annoy some of my neighbors sometimes by messing up their bins, but it was just a perfect reminder we're in the fox's habitat.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, my dad gifted me the second name of Amanita, after Amanita muscaria. And yeah, I had these magical mushrooms painted all over my room and on any piece of art that my dad gifted for me. Yeah, it instilled this curiosity from a very young age into the magical world of plants and fungi. My dad used to even take me liberty cat picking when I was about 6 or 7. Wouldn't let me eat them, just giving me the opportunity to really connect with the land and search the grassland floor for these magical organisms. And he always used to tell me that these mushrooms made him believe in God. And when I was a young girl, I had no idea what he was talking about. My mother's very atheist as well. But it was only when I was about 18 at a festival where I encountered liberty cats myself, where I had this magical epiphany where I was like, Dad, I understand. Yeah, so I'm very, very thankful to have had a dad like that.
If I had discovered these medicines or psilocybin at a younger age, I wonder how much that would have shaped those earlier ambitions and goals in my life, because I feel like I was so caught up in another dimension at that point.
That young understanding that we are all one was really profound and just, yeah, instilled this drive into me to want to help make the world a better place in any way, shape, or form. And that sort of led me to work in a lot of NGOs and do different sort of volunteering things, and finally led me to working with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're doing this for a special solstice episode because the solstice has been quite a poignant moment in the calendar for us and our paths crossing, or the solstices, I should say, because it was the summer solstice last year where we met, and you came to our first gathering on British soil as rooted healing.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. And it was from, I heard about you guys through a connection that I made in Mexico, who'd been to one of your retreats. And yeah, I just had this deep inner knowing and calling that I had to be there. I'm really, really happy that I trusted my gut in that.
I've just got this image of us on the beach together doing the summer solstice ceremony. I think it was about mid-morning, and there was this huge buzzard sat atop the rocks at the back of the beach, watching us directly above, watching the whole ceremony. That felt so poignant somehow. And we covered ourselves with the blue clay from the cliff and lay in the sun like wrinkling, weird little seals. And there was joy and there was laughter, but also this tenderness I felt. And then we went into the sea all together and had a picnic. And that's just one of my favorite kind of ceremonies, just being outside and immersing in all the elements. But I remember seeing you really moved at one moment in that ceremony. And it was such an anchor for me to know that you don't always need the psychoactive medicines. We can feel that primordial remembering, and we can feel our hearts opening through the art of ritual alone. And it was actually in seeing you in that moment that really hit home for me.
I remember you led this part of the ceremony where we connected with the spirit of the mint plant. And there was a point where we were using it on our wounds. And I really felt that energy, that cleansing, purifying energy coming from my womb. And there's just power of being together at these moments as well. And a lot of us got naked as well. And that was quite edgy for a lot of people. And I just, felt very, very honored for us to have created this safe space for people to feel vulnerable and feel completely at home in the elements, in these wild bodies that we have. And yeah, it was a very special moment for me.
Yeah, me too. And the birds They really spoke to me with that gathering. It felt like the spirit of the land was saying, "Okay, we see you. You're going to bring ceremony to these lands. We're keeping an eye on you." When I drove away after packing down from that particular gathering in Dorset, there were three ravens on the side of the road, all watching. And I got shivers from the top of my head all the way through my body. And this was after, obviously, our beautiful ceremony with the buzzard, keeping eye over the whole process. And then I went straight to Cornwall to spend a few days with family. And I parked my car, went down to the little bay and paddled in the sea and came back up. And there was a buzzard on top of the roof of my car.
No way.
Just sat there. Beautiful buzzard, I think quite a young buzzard. And I was like, okay, this is it. This is what happens when you start approaching wilderness and ceremony with reverence. It's like the spirits say, okay, well, here's the conversation. We're here. It was so magical to have those encounters. So magical. And here we are at the winter solstice, having worked together, you said for a whole year. So a whole year. Wow.
Amazing. And it's obviously the week of your birthday as well. So yeah, how does it feel having the solstice this week and your birthday? Does it feel like a poignant time of year for you?
Yeah. And I never knew about the solstice growing up, but when I did start diving into the indigenous ways of Mother Europe, I loved finding out about this way of being with the land. And actually it was the original way, celebrating these pivotal moments of our cyclical existence. And I also learned through studying somatics, however we're born, the effects ripple through into our lives. And I was induced. And so I was learning about what induced births tend to do. And it was through this that I suddenly thought, oh, I think I was aiming to come out on the winter solstice.
That would make sense.
It was 2 days before. In a way, I feel like I have two birthdays now. My obviously magical, amazing day that my mother birthed me into the world, and also this more liminal day of the winter solstice where perhaps there was some sort of desire to actually submerge a little late and sluggish in this special moment. Yeah, and I'll share. It's been a strange birthday this year and last year. This year I just had an accident where my partner and I fell off an electric scooter. We fell off quite magnificently and I really hurt myself. Thankfully, not to the point of hospital admission. I got home and the whole process was already such a meditation. It was like, wow, this is what it feels like when your body has been really injured, and the heat that was coming from my leg and just the humbling nature of needing to ask whoever is there for help and going into the restaurant and asking for ice and the kindness. And there was something that took me right back to having cancer, actually. And, or even more recently in Mexico when I ended up in hospital with all of the typhoid and salmonella. And then I got home and I felt really nauseous. And I thought, okay, I guess my body's in shock. The nausea did not go away, though. It built and built and built until I realized, it dawned on me, oh, I think I have a virus that's come on in this exact moment where I can barely walk to the toilet and sit myself down on it. And so then I had 24 hours of purging. And the reason I say purging is because I tapped into the energy of this virus. I was coming to this somatic sensing, really tapping into the nausea, which my partner was helping me do, and asking, what do you need? Why are you here? And I did feel that these bugs perhaps do come through to give us a bit of a clean and to get rid of something that isn't really serving us, because it was so grim. And I was completely humbled. I also went into a deep fever and my whole skeleton was aching. And I've come out the other side. I feel like I've lost all the stress I was carrying. And I feel like it purged all of that away and just stripped me back to the bone. And so this birthday, I've just been feeling so immensely grateful to have a body that is magnificent enough to self-heal.
So not the birthday gift that you would have asked for, but the birthday gift that you needed.
Yeah, and here we are. And there's something to be said about the darkness of this time and what we can access there. And I recognize in our modern era, we're living with so much light, but there's something about that darkness, going into the darkness and into the silence.
Yeah. When I was only in 1837, I believe that the electric light was created, which is such a short period of time. And before that happened, we would have had to slow down and work with the daylight hours. But because we now have electricity, we're forced to continue working with the same energy that we've had throughout the whole year, even in these summer months when the sun's at its brightest. And I think, yeah, this time of year, it's important to remember to be in tune with what's going on outside. And the trees are losing their leaves to conserve their energy for the winter months, and animals are nestling into their dens. And I think it's an opportunity for us to do the same.
I love that you said animals nestling into their dens, and also that you invited the fox into this conversation, because Isla McLeod, who is going to be one of the guest teachers on our Deepen Your Roots course, and she's also going to be on the podcast next month, she just shared in her newsletter for the solstice that a ritual she has recently really embodied and enjoyed is finding a way to consciously enter a dreaming den, a place in nature that offers sanctuary within the darkness, where you can curl up on the earth with the intention to be in silence and embrace this time of year, embrace the darkness. And so she's found long barrows or caves, particularly powerful places for this practice. But she also says hollow trees, gorse or holly bushes, and handmade wooden dens work just as well. I'll quote her actually: in courting the silence within the dark embrace of earth, something essential about our nature is revealed. From the void, there is a spark that creates a vibration that births form, whether a thought, feeling, vision, or sound. From the chaos of the darkness, something is born into the light of consciousness.
Wow.
It's kind of like those darkroom retreats that you get in Mexico.
And I can imagine all of your senses completely heightened to smell and the sounds going on around you and the feeling of the earth.
I'm going to persuade my partner. This is going to be a big ask, but it is, it's still kind of my birthday-ish. You say, what do you want? What do we want to do for my birthday? I think we should go and find a burrow, take your sheepskin rug and some hot water bottles and a thermos and go and curl up there and dream with the earth. You can head up north here and there's actually some beaver dens.
Wow.
And so we could go and dream with the beavers.
That would be stunning. My fingers are crossed for you with your persuasive skills.
Yeah, I mean, if not, I'll have to go out on my own, but I think I'm still summoning up my strength. I think I'd like some company, to be honest. And speaking of the darkness, there is this beautiful poem that Laura Weaver has shared. It's called Drinking Starlight for the Fertile Darkness. In December, starlight pours through the body like wine. Long nights wrap around us, a few hours of daylight, a blink of the sun's eye on the body, and then back to the down and in. Here there is an inner fire that burns, a stoking that can only happen when the blaze of summer gives way to velvet darkness, to the breath of silence, to the wings of the feathered sky. All that once flowed up and out of the trunk into the leaves, now flows down and into the roots. All that lives below in the underland is filled and revitalized. The rivers under the rivers, the seas under the seas, the mountains under the mountains, the heart beneath the heart. This is where the wanderer goes now, here to the wild, trackless territory, a place where no map can guide. Here we find the ancient handprints of our ancestors on cave walls reaching through time. Here we find the paintings of horses running across stone in the glow of our own inner light. In this place, the sound of a single tone is enough to feast on, for all is spun back to its essence. In these days, we hum a song strung from the notes between the notes. We write stories that live between the lines of our plot line. We dream with dark matter. We lean into, listen into. In December, starlight pours into the body like wine. Drink deeply, for our very lives depend on it. That's quite the invitation to go into the darkness, isn't it?
Absolutely stunning.
Speaking to that liminality that I think the darkness puts us in, it pulls us into the in-between, the waking and the sleeping, and that time of potent composting of the past cycle since the last solstice, and dreaming, that deep dreaming of what we're becoming.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a potent time to plant intentions as well, I believe, because from Friday onwards, the sun's going to be brighter and our days are going to be longer. So it feels like a good time to be able to plant these seeds of intention to grow with the growing sun.
And we have our incredible Stonehenge, which is really quite near where my mum lives. And she used to be able to touch and climb on the stones at Stonehenge when she was younger. I'm still hoping to go to one of the events where you can actually be in the circle, because I feel the energy there must be so potent, because you've got that blue stone in a circle that's all the way from Pembrokeshire, which is where I was born. And to think that our ancestors brought those rocks over, and these rocks were the ancestors. And so the reverence it must have taken for these rocks and the representations of the ancestors being the earliest bodies we can be with, elemental matter compressed into these ancient rocks from the earliest times. I mean, the wisdom they had to have that as their source of worship, as their holding of their worship, because it's still unclear, I suppose, but I can only picture our ancestors in the Stonehenge, so perfectly designed so that the winter solstice sun peeps through that archway. And to think of the dances and the songs that might have perpetuated, in the liberty caps that might have been involved, who knows? But to think of the potency of that moment of deep inner resilience and survival of midwinter and coming together from all across the land. At the moment, the UK government are hoping to dig a tunnel through the site, which would actually damage massively the site and take away people's ability to see the Stonehenge when they are going across the road as it is now. So there have been concerns about this and protests, and something's happened at court just this week. Yeah, we can add a link in the show notes for anyone who's interested about that, who might want to get involved and protect this ancient site. So I'm curious, because it sounds like you've had a very young encounter with a state of interconnectedness and an appreciation for the medicine that's gifted through our natural environment, our living landscapes, things that are available right here. And so many people, myself included, pilgrimage far away to find healing and to find alternative medicines. And a big part of my story with rooted healing has been coming home and really exploring what that is on our home soil, what the ancestral practices are. And I'm just curious, when you started feeling drawn to specifically ceremony and ritual and the holding of these spaces rather than recreational use only.
I guess in my mid-20s, I would take myself to a forest and do my own sort of ritual with mushrooms. But it was only later on in my 20s where I made the journey to Ecuador. Yeah, it was a deep calling, and it was when we're about to go into lockdown as well. So there was that fear that I might not be able to get there. But I just had this inner fire that knew I was going to go and do this yoga course that intertwined plant medicine. So I had my first encounter with San Pedro, and then ayahuasca. And yeah, like you say, I think it was the magic of the ceremony, even more so than the actual medicines, that I found was really powerful to me.
How did you find San Pedro?
So the ceremony was interesting because it was all in Spanish, and I was the only one in the group that didn't speak Spanish. And a lot of the ceremony is based on prayer. Yeah, the medicine, I don't know if I agreed with it so much, and with my body, I felt quite sick for most of the ceremony. And a 5-hour sweat lodge, which was my first sweat lodge, and then running into the sea at dawn naked.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it was really magical.
Yeah, I was just curious because some people, it is their medicine and it just really is deeply spiritual for them. And then I think for a lot of other people, and myself included, I have huge respect and reverence for sacredness of it and how it's used indigenously. And at the same time, I've not had that spiritual connection with it. I've sat in many San Pedro ceremonies. I was gatekeeper for, I've lost count how many, when I was living and working out in Ecuador. And I also found it really quite brutal on my bodies, my gut.
And
Yeah.
I'll ask you what a gatekeeper is, just to share with our listeners who might not know that term.
Yeah, good idea. Gatekeeper. So within the ceremonies I became familiar with in Latin America, there's a strong etiquette of how they're held, who does what, and it's very multidimensional. So, for example, you'll have a medicine keeper, and then the medicine keeper usually has someone to support them by their side. And then you'd have a fire keeper, someone who is tending to the fire for the entire ceremony. On the other side of the ceremony space, one side of the doorway, and a gatekeeper on the other side of the doorway. That's the most traditional setup that I saw again. The gatekeeper can be anyone who is responsible and has experience with the ceremonies, who can really take care of the group. And so when I was invited to be a gatekeeper, it felt like a massive honor. And it was also quite the initiation, because you are invited, in fact, you're asked to drink the medicine. In many of these traditional ceremonies, everyone drinks the medicine, including the medicine keepers. From these lineages, they would be very untrusting of anyone who's holding space who isn't also drinking the medicine, because it's from the place of that connection with the medicine that they're able to actually hold and heal and use their songs and their prayers and be a vessel actually for the wisdom and the holiness, for lack of a better word, of the medicine of the plant or fungi itself. That can be pretty radical to a Western mind, especially, when you have the clinical setting and it's the psychologist and it's one-on-one and it's in a room and there's this entirely different protocol. Suddenly you can be in a space where there's a circle of people, maybe 30 people, which I think is a lot. The center I was working at for a year sometimes did go up to that number, and the medicine keepers are drinking the medicine. Sometimes they're drinking just as much as they're given to everyone else. And it's different, it's a different kind of trust. And you're leaning into an ancient tradition where it's not about the expertise of a kind of intellectualized field. It's about an energetic, spiritual, much more multidimensional role that a shaman or a medicine keeper does. And so the gatekeeper has to make sure that people stay in ceremony and stay safe. I've heard of a lot of ceremonies that don't have gatekeepers. I've been asked to sing in ceremonies that don't have gatekeepers. And that was actually when I started to realize that I had a responsibility to play in this movement that is happening, of actually doing this work in a really ethical, responsible, and safe way. So on rooted healing ceremonies, we generally have 2 gatekeepers. You were obviously one of our wonderful gatekeepers in our last retreat in October in the Netherlands. And Lilia was the other, an incredible psychologist that we work with. How was it for you being a gatekeeper in the Netherlands with us?
It was beautiful, and it was amazing to see you and Andrew at work as well, and just wanting to support that and make you feel like you could focus on holding the space. What I wanted to ask, in the retreat in the Netherlands, there was one ceremony inside at nighttime and one ceremony in the daytime outside. And I just wanted to ask what your thought process, or what the idea is behind having these 2 different types of ceremonies.
Yeah, the nocturnal one feels to me an invitation to come into the darkness, like we've been talking about with the solstice, coming into that fertile soil to really compost what needs to be composted. It feels like a more feminine invitation into the earth body, into the mother, into the womb. It's often inside because of that womb-like holding and that sense of real safety. And I'm obsessed also with round spaces and natural spaces, and coming into something that, we don't tell people this is like a womb, but so many people will say something akin to that, and to feeling held in a more motherly way. And hopefully, ideally, an opportunity for people to go deep with the darkness as well, less distractions. And then the second ceremony in the day, we're inviting a more outward engagement with the land. We do that outside because we want people to really feel the nature and the trees and the beings all around them, with a whole day of ceremony and being with that. And in a way, you could say perhaps that's the more masculine invitation, because we're coming out into the world. And I also think that it's quite potent because you can actually integrate from the first ceremony in that second ceremony as well. So maybe you went very inward and had a lot of insight or experience. Maybe it was really challenging, but then you've got that second ceremony and the clarity and the light of day to contemplate what came up and bring it forth, expanding into more insight and more reflection. And also in that daytime ceremony, we like to allow a break so that you can actually just, because ceremony it's a very held thing. And so having that moment to go and connect with the tree and touch the natural world and taste some fruit and just be with the land, I think is a really important piece of that ceremony, keeping an intentional energy as well. So it's offering two very different experiences. And
Mm.
then in Portugal, we're going to have a third ceremony, which is a lower dose walk through the forest, where we've got 130 hectares of land, a huge part of which is ancient, quite rare coastal forest. And again, that's a different experience. It's a silent walk with the medicine where we're able to tap into that animal body of ours relating to the land with less separation, perhaps also integrating the first two ceremonies as well through that experience.
I remember my first experience with ayahuasca, and it was in Ecuador, and I was traveling, and it was at a point where I wasn't sure where I wanted to live in the world. I could have gone anywhere, but I had this intense, clear vision of me as a grandmother in some woodland, and that woodland was in England or in the United Kingdom, and I had all my grandchildren playing around me. And it was so beautiful to get such a clear message of where I belonged. And I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about your process of moving back to England and wanting to do your work here.
Oh, I love that image though. I want to dwell there for some more time. I can so picture you as a grandmother. And there is something so beautiful about a calling home, especially in as privileged people where we do have so much choice. There's something powerfully humbling about returning to whence we came and being of service there. Yeah, it's been a huge process for me. The theme of home has been one of my biggest longings. The real nostalgia started to strike when I was living in Mexico. I specifically remember one point where I saw a picture of someone I had interviewed on the podcast. Joya and Lucy had been on the podcast, and they're filmmakers, and they had this picture of them lying in the bluebells, this dense bluebells in the woods with the sun shining through the trees, and they'd written something lovely about being there. And I felt a huge tug on my heart for homeland, because the farm I grew up on, we had bluebell woods and badger dens and streams and all kinds of mystical energies on that land. 50 acres in Wales.
Wow.
And I miss it so much because my mum sold it. I long for it because it would have been quite the perfect home for rooted healing. And I also really honor her decision because she was a single mum since I was 4. And so it was me and her feeding the animals come rain, snow, wind. Yeah, now I'm calling in land and I don't know where it will be because this work, the psilocybin work, isn't legal in Britain, which is why, of course, our gatherings are overseas. They're in the Netherlands. The calling to Portugal is very strong. Psilocybin is permitted in Portugal. In fact, there's much more tolerance for the mushrooms than there are in the Netherlands. The Netherlands, you have to work with the truffles. And the truffles are 5 or 6 times weaker than the mushrooms. The mycelial knots, essentially, that became resistant to growing up too early because of being over-harvested or whatever, or harsh conditions. They're tough on the tummy and much more likely to have tummy upset with the truffles than you are with the mushrooms. The mushrooms can be very kind on the body. More than that, though, it's the wilderness we're really looking for this work, and glorious night skies and absolutely no noise pollution, which is quite a rarity these days.
And then, yeah, I just wanted to touch on song and music in ceremonies. I know a lot of retreats use playlists sometimes, which obviously works for some people, but something that Rooted Healing is quite passionate about is being analog in these ceremonies and using instruments and voice to create these very deep soundscapes during ceremony. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I think we're missing something so profound by bringing in pre-made things into these spaces. And my passion and my heart is very strongly in what can be held in the organic present moment, not just from a place of, well, let's listen to some live music and sort of make the ceremony a concert, but no, let's use the voice as a vessel for carrying the hearts of all the ancestors and all the land spirits and all the stories that are in this space right now, and allow that to almost be the ship for the entire experience, the journey that the medicine takes you on. And the instruments, let that do it. And let the silence be there, please, too. Let the silence, so that we can hear the breeze through the trees and listen to the whispers and wisdom of that. And we can hear the birds sing. I think our ancestors come to these ceremonies, the ancient ones, the ones that are familiar with them. And I think that's why we're supposed to make them familiar. And if we're calling in spirit and we're calling in healing and we're calling in guidance, these spaces need to be very receptive to that guidance. I was shown in one ceremony, it was an ayahuasca ceremony when I was working out in Ecuador. I felt myself moving through the landscapes, almost formless. And I saw the ceremony from above, and I saw the fire and the coals and the altar. And I smelt the smells, and I felt my whole being go into that space through the sort of portal of the fire. And in a ceremony later on, one of my teachers said, "Family, I feel guided to share with you what this altar is all about." You know, it's not just a pretty thing. It's very intentional. And he talked through the whole artistry and lineage and meanings of everything on this particular crescent moon altar, with the 7 sacred directions and the hidden symbols and codes and everything. And it was so intricate and it was so beautiful. And one of the things he said was, and this is where spirit lands. And this needs to be familiar to them. And this is, you know, they come in here, and this is why we never step our feet here into this particular space, both of our feet. We always keep, if we're tending to the fire, we always keep one foot in this world. And only rarely do we step that other foot into the space where the spirit lands. And I thought, wow, okay, because I feel like I felt that. I saw that from another perspective. And I also saw that as an amazing metaphor for this path. Keep your feet in this world, on these soils, rooted. But when it's needed, in order to tend to these spaces of healing and growth and togetherness, of course, step your foot into the spirit. But don't jump both feet in and stay there, which does happen. You know, a kind of unrooted spirituality does exist. And also this sort of ascension, transcendence focused type of spirituality. But no, the teachings are, we are all related. Keep your feet in this world, tend to the flames, tend to the hearth, tend to community, tend to the land. We are all related. Ahoma Tekiasi. I can't remember what you asked me, but that obviously propelled me to go there.
Beautiful. Thank you. I've gone in full documentary producer.
You have.
Question mode.
I wanna throw some back at you. You know, it's the solstice. And the solstice is time for this dreaming and this incubating and this planting, I think you said, of our intentions. What do you dream forth with this work and with all of your creations? Because you are doing so much more. You are a documentary producer, a yoga teacher. You DJ with vinyl, which I just think is so cool.
Yeah, we're putting on a night soon, actually, to raise money for a local community centre. So just bubbling. I guess the seed of intention is accessibility for us to continue our work and it reach not necessarily just our work, but this sort of powerful healing work can reach the people that need it most, and making it accessible eventually from a price point, but also accessible to people who might not be familiar with this work, that might not feel like they need it, might see psychedelics as terrifying. I've got a lot of friends who I know would really benefit from working with mushrooms, but even though they've experimented with lots of different narcotics, they are terrified of working with something that is grown from our earth. And for the power and wisdom of these medicines to reach those that need it in a world of disconnect, these days, such as the winter solstice, are great flagstones to remember and reconnect and realize that we are part of this cycle, this ever-changing cycle. We have the ability to change and evolve just like the land does.
Something that we're sharing through the online course is really finding our active hope, finding those places where it is already happening so that we can believe and feel into and support what we're actually calling in. And I hear about the accessibility, and I think of how even some of the most unlikely places here in the UK, you can now find sweat lodge ceremonies, solstice unions, people coming together to do some sort of ritual. When I think of accessibility, obviously we are always talking about this and we're always trying to explore ways to be sustainable with this work, our end, and also make sure that there are accessibility routes, because it is a big investment. The current model we're working with, there's just no way around it. But it brings me so much active hope when I feel into how much of a shift is happening. In the past 10 years, there's been a huge rising interest in Indigenous practices, Indigenous wisdom, ancestral ways of being, ceremony, bubbling up from the grassroots in a way that there are different ways for us to reach and have access. This is innate to us, isn't it? To be together in ceremony and to work with psilocybin. We've been doing this for at least 10,000 years because we've got those cave paintings in Europe showing the people with the mushrooms coming out of them, which when you look at them, it seems like a pretty darn clear sign of some sort of psychoactive engagement with our fungi kin. This is familiar to what Francis Weller would call the indigenous soul.
And yeah, just meeting more and more people with that shared vision just gives hope. And the more of us that put our minds to it and have this intention, the more it can manifest.
I'd love to, with the solstice, wish blessings on everyone who's listening and beyond. And there's so much intensity in the world right now, and there's so much suffering, and also the demanding of that suffering being brought into the forefront of everyone's minds. And it feels like another shift in our collective consciousness in what it means to be a part of this collective earth family. And at the same time, I just want to name, because it's coming up, I am not okay with the shaming that has been happening in people's rage to respond. Please let this be a space free of comparison and judgment. May our searching and our yearning for a fairer world not use the tools and the polarization of shame. So I'm wishing so much compassion on that process as well that's unfolding, and praying for solutions, praying for hope, and wishing that these darker months do allow us to also retreat into our own inner, deep, fertile worlds of dreaming, because I hope we remember that's so important too.
I just wanted to share a reading from an incredible man called John O'Donoghue.
Oh, I love him.
Within the grip of winter, it's almost impossible to imagine the spring. The grey perished landscape is shorn of colour. Only bleakness meets the eye. Everything seems severe and edged. Winter is the oldest season. It has some qualities of the absolute. Yet beneath the surface of winter, the miracle of spring is already in preparation. The cold is relenting. Seeds are wakening up. Colours are beginning to imagine how they will return. Then, imperceptibly, somewhere one bud opens and a symphony of renewal is no longer reversible. From the black heart of winter, a miraculous breathing plenitude of colour emerges.
It reminds me of so many creation myths where life came forth from the blackness, from that fertile womb of the cosmos.
What are you doing tomorrow?
We haven't decided yet, but I'm really thinking about this burrow ritual. What are you going to do?
I'm going to be going to Avebury Stone Circle, which will be the first time that I'll be visiting a stone circle at one of these celebrations. So I'm excited.
living in ecstasy. She is a fountain of wisdom that flows through me, and I give thanks to these teachings, these initiations of heart and soul. Oh, please show me the way. Won't you show me the way? Oh, to let the light in. And I'll let the light in, and I'll let the light in, and I'll let the light in. Let the light in, 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 let the light in. I will not let the darkness blow out my flame.
Through deepened imagination, consciousness expansion, and cross-cultural wisdom exchange, we explore human soul ecology to ignite collective healing, nature awe, and interconnectivity. We offer nature-immersive ceremonial gatherings, legal and safe psychedelic-assisted psilocybin retreats, integrative healing courses, and a growing collection of resources. Visit rootedhealing.org to learn more. Please do consider joining our Patreon community, where you can gift forward and support our work in exchange for bonus material, book and gift giveaways, meditations, workshops, episode transcripts, community discussion, and discounts to our events. Your monthly contribution, which can be as little as £2 a month, helps us cover the costs of running the show, and our hope is to gather enough gifting community to really go the extra mile with this show and its purpose. Come follow us on Instagram at Rooted Healing Co, or find us on the various platforms you tune into. And don't forget to rate and review the show if these stories and conversations are touching you. It's a beautiful act of reciprocity. Thank you.